there's two sides of it. Some people believe it's a huge mistake. Other people think it's not that big of a deal. It's just part of the business. That's how it works. And you got to fight for every $2 million that you can fight over. In this case, $2.5 million that they were apart.
Yeah.
Because if that happens twice or once, now that's a half a Colin Ray. Or, whatever.
Yeah.
That might be the reliever that you need. That was the extra depth that you were looking for. It's the optics of it for me.
Yeah.
I don't love the idea of Kyle Tucker coming here, being $2.5 million away, if you believe you are going to try and woo him, even though, first of all, going into the offseason, if you truly believe you're going to make an offer to him and try and keep him, a competitive offer, if you truly believe that, you also have to be realistic and know, listen, we most likely will not, because of who we are, we will not make the highest offer to Kyle Tucker, even if you believe you're going to go after him. So I don't want any bad taste in his mouth. I don't want him to even think about Wrigley not being the place for him until it's 38 and raining at Wrigley and he's sitting there in the outfield going, what am I doing here? That's the first time I want that to cross his mind.
Yeah.
I want him to go to Arizona, have great vibes, get along with all his teammates. I don't want him to even think once about, man, why couldn't they give me $2.5 million? Why are we fighting over this?
Sure.
I just don't think it's a great look if you're going to try and woo him is the only word I could think of in the future. Does this mean in your mind that the Cubs are looking at going, listen, we know we're not going to get him for more than 1 year, so we might as well get him for the best price we can get him for, because that's the way business is done. And if it's $2.5 million we save, it's $2.5 million we save, because you know what? We're pretty confident we're not getting him long-term anyway. I hope that is not the sign. I hope that's not going through anybody's head in the front office.
I think that's what a large majority of Cubs fans feel like right now based on how this front office and ownership group are operating, right? I don't believe that's it.
And yes, Gary, they still could settle before the hearing.
Sure, yeah. I will say this. I agree with you on the optics. It doesn't look great. Kyle Tucker's been in the organization for a month, right? But at the same time, you want to,
zoom out
a little bit. The Red Sox and Jarren Duran are going to arbitration over like $800,000, and he was one of their best players last year. He's a guy that they should probably be trying to have a good relationship with.
I think that's fair.
I think that the optics don't look great, but I also think at the end of the day, Kyle Tucker is going to be a Cub long term if the Cubs just pay the guy. I don't even necessarily look at it from Kyle Tucker's view. Do you think Kyle Tucker is even part of this particular negotiation?
He knows what's going on.
Right, he knows what's going on, but I think that in some universe, maybe this one, that he just wants to play baseball and he wants to go earn that big contract. That's what I think. I don't think that this $2.5 million is necessarily holding him back from man, do I want to re-sign here? I don't personally fully think that's a thing. I don't think it looks great. Absolutely. But I also don't think at the end of the day that this is the worst thing. I don't think this is the end of the world. It's going to come down to, are the Cubs going to pay him? The worst case scenario for me is if we're sitting here in June and this team isn't very good and we're talking about trading Tucker. That's the worst case scenario to me, because then you really aren't trying to extend this guy. That's the worst case scenario. That's the narrative that has made me cringe the most on social media since this guy was traded to the Cubs. That's how much this front office and this ownership group have, what's the word I'm thinking of? They have conditioned us to feel like.
That's it.
They have conditioned us to feel like that there's absolutely no way this can happen, and they made this trade just so they could trade him for prospects at the end of the trade deadline in July. Give me a break. Let me enjoy something, man. as negative and as pessimistic as I've been about this front office and everything the last 2 months, like, can we at least have a little bit of hope that they're legitimately gonna try and pay this guy? Can we try? Now, again, like, this doesn't make me feel great, but at the end of the day, I also feel like it's not black or white. It's not a signal that they're not gonna re-sign him at the end of next season.
It's about the imagery of it, though, right? Like,
sure, yeah, the optics aren't great, man.
I would guess that most former players wouldn't say or current players wouldn't say that they're just totally turned off by going to arbitration. They probably wouldn't say that. They know it's part of the business, yada, yada, yada. However, there is human nature in anything you do. If you negotiate with your boss and he says, "Nah, we're not giving you $1,000 more,"
yeah,
don't you twist your head and think about the other ways that they might be spending $1,000 or different things like that? Of course it does.
Yeah.
Of course, that's just human nature. I'm not worried. I'm really not as worried about that part of it as I am just the picture that they are painting as an organization, which has become reality by most people that have their eyes open, that the Cubs are nickel and diming a lot of stuff. They're not playing big boy. While they are outspending the division, it's not hard because they're in a division with all small market teams.
Yeah.
If they were in a division with big market teams like the Yankees and the Red Sox, people would be looking at them going, they're doing a lot of nickel and diming, right?
Well,
they just are. And that's why people are calling. That leads to the Colin Ray signing being called another mid player as opposed to, well, this guy could be their 5th or 6th or 7th starter. Like, it's just a depth piece, not a big deal. But that's why people are starting to look at it and say, oh, look at that nickel dime move. And people that don't know that Roki's going to be cheap anyways and they're not taking it, they're saying, look what they're doing instead of the Roki thing, instead of throwing tons of money, which you can't, right? Like, that's not part of it. But, and it's why the Soto conversation goes on, because why you didn't even make the guy an offer.
Right.
You didn't even make him an offer. And it's what Matthew Boyd. Why Matthew Boyd? Why can't you go get Corbin Burns? It's all of those things together, and then finally bringing in the one superstar player that we've begged for 3 years. He finally gets to town, and the first order of business with him is over $2.5 million. Is it the end of the world? No, but it adds to the giant, bigger picture of the Cubs running a very tight book.
Yes.
And hopefully it doesn't mean that the payroll, because we said trading Bellinger would hopefully just take that money and push it somewhere else. Now, if you start trying to save 2.5 here and a little bit, a little piece of that Bellinger money should go in the pocket too. Now you start seeing, please don't tell me the payroll is going down.
Yeah. That the fear that I have that this team isn't going to have a payroll near the luxury tax tier as of today is significantly more intense than it was a month ago. A month ago, when they made the move for Tucker, it was like, okay. And that was after they had already made the signing for Boyd. I felt like they were making really solid moves. And at this point, because I'm still optimistic that they're going to fill out the rest of this roster, I still have some optimism that we will feel good on opening day about this roster. But whether it's because the Roki Sasaki decision has slowed down the market,
probably,
or not, whether it is or not, the fact that it's been very quiet these last 3 weeks or so is starting to creep into the back of my head of like, I've watched this movie before,
yes,
brother. I've watched this movie before, and it just doesn't make any sense. If you make a move like you do for Kyle Tucker, and you're trying to win the division, and you're openly telling people that you're really trying to win, and Jed Hoyer's going into a lame duck season, I'm okay that they didn't sign Corbin Burns. They were never really linked to him. I'm okay that you didn't sign Juan Soto as much as I think he would have changed your franchise directory completely over the next 10 years, whatever. I'm okay that you didn't do a lot of things. You added the superstar that you needed. But this roster it's projected still somewhere between 85 to 90 wins. That's where it's at. they need to get to 90. They need to get to 90 to 95, man. And they can't be finished. They cannot be finished. I refuse to believe that they're finished until we see all the players showing up to spring training and most of the free agents are off the market. You know, another name that they could have signed, and I'm okay that, I guess, in a way that they didn't sign him, was Jeff Hoffman. 3 years to the Blue Jays. Apparently, the medicals weren't great, and that's why the Orioles didn't sign him, and they went and got Andrew Kittredge or whatever.
Nobody has good medicals anymore.
All I know is that he was one of the top relievers on the market that you could have gone and got, and he was for 3 years, $30 million, $33 million, whatever. Like, Jorge Lopez, like I said earlier, like, these are moves that are, like, they're right up Jed Hoyer's alley, but what are we doing? So, I know I'm sounding irrational, and I'm, like, venting a little bit. I am optimistic that they're going to fill out the rest of the roster, but I don't blame fans who are
getting
concerned. I do not blame them because I'm getting a little concerned. I want them to finish the offseason. That's what I want them to do. And this is what the problem is with baseball offseason. Like, compared to the NFL and the NBA, like, everyone makes their moves the first, like, 2 weeks of free agency and all of that, and you know how teams are going to look immediately. And baseball is just like, we don't know until, like, what, spring training? Like, I just would like to know what we're doing so I can take the time to figure out if I'm going to buy into this team or not.
We all silly like the mayor.